Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm so happy to see everyone joining in. Well, in the meantime, let me introduce myself. So, I'm Avinash Bansal, your host today. I'm co founder of Tomo Club. It's an educational gaming company for kids to learn social and emotional skills via multiplayer games. So, uh, we as humanity, I would say, are a big believer of analysis, tracking, and results of what we do. We love to calculate ROI, that return on investments, on things, and it does make sense. But to what we are doing, is it even worth it? Same applies with parents, like who wants to analyze whether my kid is making progress at school, in sports, in mindset, etc. I know what I just said will invite a lot of mixed reviews, and I can see like faces already. But that's why instead of me talking about it, I got our pro guest Shauna with us, who is a dear friend, founder of Invata Learning, and she has been a singer of a band who has toured across America. And she has been a teacher, a mother, an investor, and she also runs Anderson Wines. So she wears a lot of hats, and I welcome you, Shauna.
Thanks, Avanash. It's so good to be here. Yeah, I'm Shauna. I'm in the Sacramento area. We have 6 kids, and if only they were all the same, it would be so much easier, but they're all so different. And so we've homeschooled our kids on and off. Some go to school, some don't. And we just try to instill that love of learning in them. I've been a charter school administrator for about 17 years. And in that position, the charter school is non-classroom based. So we don't have a site and kids learn at home. So essentially homeschooled. And then they're overseen by teachers like myself. And that led me to start the company Invata and trying to take that model of personalized learning under the guidance and support of an educator for families and helping them to explore personalized learning. And with that, finding cool companies and cool curriculum like Tomo Club to introduce to parents. So, yeah, that's about it. And all along, singing and making wine and all of those fun things come along with it too.
Well, that's quite an exciting journey, Shauna, and I'm pretty sure 6 kids must be a handful. So I want to start a question, like on conversation with the most important question. So as a mother, how do you make decisions with respect to the kids' education, from school selection to after-school things to several programs out there? So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a big, I would argue it's probably the most important decision that we make as parents. And even we have a responsibility even for kids that aren't ours, right? Because they're going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So I think
Yes.
education is one of the foundational things that we should be focusing on for the future. So, of course, when they're little, really it's just providing that fertile ground for learning, which is, letting them play, letting them look at books, reading to them, experiencing life really. And as they grow and you learn their personalities and kind of what they need. So I would say I start with, what does my kid need at this point right now? When they're young, they need to be around other kids. So maybe I'm looking for opportunities for them to socialize in groups, whether that's in person or now virtual, which is super cool. And what are they interested in? Like, are they interested in dinosaurs, Legos, painting? And if they don't know, providing, opportunities for them to figure out what they're interested in. Um, and also pushing that challenge a bit too, right? So then what do they need? What are they interested in? Then I take that and kind of think about where can I go to find that? What are the resources out there? What classes are there? Who do I know? So that's kind of how I approach it. And of course, like I said, every kid is so different, and it does take a lot of time when you're doing it right and doing it um, to fidelity. So
Yeah.
that's how I approach it.
You do mentioned the most idealistic uh, process, like a parent, like understanding the
Mhm.
kid, understanding the requirements, and then searching for it. But won't you agree the fact that there is a lot of FOMO as well, a fear of missing out when it's with the kids? So how do
Oh,
you deal with that?
100%. A lot of times, I would argue that the FOMO comes mostly from a parent perspective. Like as I took my kids out of school to pursue a personalized learning path, listening to parents like, "Oh, my kids, got these grades, and they're doing this well in school, and they're going to this college," and you start to think, "Oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing for my
Yeah.
kids?" Right? And kids too, when we took them out of school, it was like, I miss my friends. You know, and just asking them, or I miss school. Well, what exactly do you miss about it?
Mm-hmm.
And mostly it was, I miss recess, or I miss hanging out with my friends. Okay, well, we can do that outside of school too. So that's what we try to provide.
Mm-hmm.
Find out, drilling down what exactly it is that they're missing out on,
Yeah.
and then showing new opportunities.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with you. You did bring it 2 points. The kids' fun time and kids' friends. Those are the motivations that kids have when they're making a decision, of course, from their lens.
Mm-hmm.
What are your motivations when you have to decide? You said, of course, you try to understand what kids want, what kid needs,
Hmm.
but that cannot be it. There has to be some other motivations when you are choosing things.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give an example of one of our daughters who, they went to private school, which was expensive and it was a sacrifice for our family, but we wanted to provide that for them. We thought it's a great school, great community, and so one of my daughters at the end of second grade wasn't reading, um, and was really struggling with anxiety and just the stress of not being able to keep up with her peers.
Yeah.
And so taking her out of that situation and homeschooling her, giving her that real direct one-to-one instruction. She was reading, after a few months, but being in the school environment, she just wasn't getting what she needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a little bit different than, everyone's situation is so different.
Yeah.
For us, um, like the stress, I'm like, we don't have to, this doesn't have to be so anxiety producing. We
Right.
can do this on our own. We can give her the attention that she needs. And then once we got out of that situation, we're like, this is amazing, you know? So, definitely finding out what they need academically. And another one of my daughters, when she got to high school level, was like, you know what, mom, being at home is really hard. I need more structure. I
Mm-hmm.
need like someone to teach me things. I can't do it online by myself. Great, let's go to school. And she went and she loved it and she did well. So helping kids understand how they learn best, I think is a great opportunity to just when you're talking to your kids, figure out
Mm-hmm.
what they.
Yeah, actually, I can, back and forth, I am able to highlight the fact that listening to kids is something that you are bringing it up back and forth. And, but even though for a new activity which starts in a kid's life, there's a lot of activation energy required for it. Like the
Mhm.
first primal, like reaction is no for anyone, right?
Right,
Right. So
totally.
there's always an activation energy required for anything to begin with. So how can you tell me like few instances of how you dealt with that?
Yeah. Well, I'll think of an analogy of like getting my kids to eat broccoli, right? Like you put it in front of them and they're gonna spit it out and say no.
Hmm.
You have to kind of put it in front of them, 1,000 times for them to be like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is pretty good. So I think that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing them a little bit and also understanding when pushing is too much, when it's causing too much anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
Knowing what's good, broccoli is actually good for you, you
Mm-hmm.
know, knowing what's actually good and what we can kind of do away with. Um, But, and just talk about it. Like, hey, starting something new is hard.
Yeah.
And your brain and your body are going to revolt a little bit. And that's totally normal. But how do you make your muscles? Like when
Mm,
you're at the gym and you're lifting weights, if you want to make muscles, you got to hurt a little bit,
yeah.
right? And so, working on your brain is like a muscle. You got to push it a little bit so that you can grow. So really kind of helping them to step outside of themselves and think like metacognitively, what's happening? Why is this good for me?
Hmm.
And of course, like age appropriate. But we start really young, like talking to my 7-year-old about that. Um, so yes, you're going to revolt and you're going to think that this is hard and difficult, but let's try it. I like to set up kind of like expectations. Let's give it 2 months.
Mm,
All right.
mm, mm.
And then I want you to really be honest with me about what are the things you really don't like about it. Don't just say,
Yeah.
I don't like it. Like, I don't like the way it makes me feel when I do this, or, this is really hard. So, really kind of help them to explain in their own words why they don't like it or why they do like it. So,
Mm.
that's how we approach it as a family.
Wow. I'm actually able to create a mind map myself while you're talking. So if I can have my takeaway from it, you are kind of like treating them as adults, right? Giving them
Oh,
this, giving them
yeah.
that though wish all kids can be that reasonable, but it has to
Right.
start from day one.
Yes, yes, talking to them like they are mini adults, right?
Yep.
If you want to foster autonomy and if you want to foster kids that are independent thinkers, kids that are resilient and strong, you have to allow them to make mistakes. You have to allow them to be able to express themselves. You have to
Yep.
allow them to choose. And that's a hard thing to do as a parent.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just example came to my mind. So the other
Yeah.
day there was one of my nephew, and though I have told him 10 times to keep his utensils back in the kitchen after eating, he still doesn't do it. So the other day I lost my patience, and my mom came back and she said, "Do you remember how many times did I tell you while you were growing up?"
Right.
So that just clicked to my mind that, oh yeah, maybe she has shown me considerable patience, and she must have bugged me thousands of times before I developed that habit, and me expecting it to happen in 10 or 20 times is kind of unrealistic. So yeah, I think she showed me a mirror right on my face. I'm like, okay.
Yes, and also thinking about, like, we talk a lot about, like, your brain as a teenager is not grown. Like, you're going to forget things. Like, that's totally normal. Like, it's
Yeah.
totally normal that your nephew wouldn't, it just doesn't register. So I talk about that with them, like, this is why, because your brain is not grown up yet.
Yep.
And so I have to remind you. And so as a parent, I have to have patience and know that I just have to do that. And my kid just knows that, oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's my brain again. And we laugh about it instead of being like, why didn't you do this? I asked you 14 times.
Yep.
Laughing about it, I think, is helpful.
Yep. 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 No, I totally understand that fact that, so you guys, let's say you ask them what they want to do, you understand. So I remember the concept of Montessori. So the first time Montessori came to picture, it was on the same
Yes.
lines that let kids choose themselves, let them explore from nature, from things around. So
Hmm.
again, that rang well. But though you have chosen something, though you have put up the activation energy, and kept on going with it, but but still, I think, how do you ensure that to continue doing it? Let's say, how should I put up? It's like, how are you going to assess whether what you made them do is even making sense, is even giving them results? So how do you take that as a call?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot before. Like, okay, you want to take this Lego robotics class. Like, why do we want to, what's interesting about this to you? Well, I want to be with some friends. I want to learn how to build cool things. I want to do this. Now, okay, well, let's explore this. Let's take this class for a couple months and then let's talk about it after. Did you learn the things you wanted to learn? Right? And if they're like, no, it was really boring, My girls did scouts for a while because they really wanted to camp and like shoot guns and bow and arrows and
Mm-hmm.
all the fun things you don't get to do, right? But when they joined it, they're like, we didn't really get to do any of those things. So, like reassessing and just talking about that
Right.
with them is helpful and setting
Mm-hmm.
up those expectations ahead of time.
That's definitely a very relevant point of expectations, setting it right. And
Hmm.
so this brings me to the main topic of discussion that we have: is my child making progress? Right.
Yeah.
So it definitely has two parts to it. One is definitely how do you analyze that part? Like how do you define progress? How do you define growth? So all those parameters. And the second part is, though you have those knowledge, yet there are insecurities always creeping in, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with the part one. As a mother, and of course then I would definitely take into picture as an educational consultant that you are providing at Invata, because then you're also thinking for others kids. So
Right.
let's start with
Right.
the first part. How do you define progress or growth of your child?
Well, it really is dependent on each child, right? Which is just, it's so different for every kid. We have a daughter that struggles with mental health issues, and so for her, progress looks a lot different than my other daughter, who is super academically focused and wants to go, you know, Harvard, right? So what is success to my first daughter, it looks a lot different than success to the second daughter. And
Yeah,
both are okay and great, right? Both are valid, and valuable. So it's really kind of getting to know the kid, and then as a family, like what's important to our family? What is our family goals? Like for me, personally, I would rather my kids be good people than get straight A's, honestly. So as a
mm,
family, that is something that we value. So getting to know what the family situation and what is important to you. And a lot of times we don't really think about our family values, really, and looking at and making decisions through those values. If family is your number one value, um, and you're spending 20 hours at work, well, really, is family really your top priority? So,
yeah.
thinking about what are your top priorities?
Mm-hmm.
From there, you can really only from there can you judge success in those terms, and then from your kids' individual interests and needs.
That's true. That's true.
So you kind of have to analyze that from the beginning, and then look, you know you are always going to suffer as parents from, am I messing my kid up? Am I doing the right thing? No matter what you do, you're going to have that insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the more you talk to people, the more you listen to webinars like this, the more you learn and read and just talk to people who have been through it, the more confident you can get um, in your choices, right? Um, and then another thing is really, and this is a hard one, don't don't think it's because of your parenting skills that your kids turn out a certain way,
Okay.
right? To a certain extent, that, like, on an extreme level, yes, I guess, if you don't feed your kids,
Mm-hmm.
that's bad. But, if you're doing everything that you can and your kid is still, struggling,
Mm-hmm.
for example, our daughter who struggled with mental health, it wasn't anything that we did or didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just kind of that was her struggle.
Yeah.
So it wasn't because we were bad parents.
Mm-hmm.
So don't ever give in to that lie about that. And then I think finally also thinking about letting go of control and your idea of what you want your kid to be, which I is really hard, especially in certain cultures I know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I have a grand vision of my kids going to college and having big families and being successful. That might not be their vision.
Mm-hmm.
Letting go of that and really talking to them and understanding and helping them to be the best person that they were meant to be. That's, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, the hardest thing. So,
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of points while you're talking. So first, coming to the part of like grades. So I think there is some important aspect as my belief that grades shows nothing but sincerity and discipline.
mm-hmm.
So it should be there in your kid, those skills, those values. If
Yep.
not for grade, then for something else.
Yes.
So
Yes. A hundred
that is,
percent. Yeah. Whether it's, yeah, working at a sport or working to get an A, that the discipline of what it takes to get that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So that is one. And as coming to the parental part, I think it's a way in our lingos, in our conversation, that if somebody is great, then in like I think subconsciously or intuitively we say great parenting must be there. And the time that there's someone who's doing bad, immediately we said bad parenting must be there. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's coming from a lot of way the society perceives that percolates down and
Yep.
creates peer pressure on the parents knowingly or unknowingly. So because they know at the end of the day they will be judged. So even how easy or how difficult it will be to let it go, it is not easy to let go.
It's not, right? And you're so right. Like, the judgment of other parents on other parents,
Yeah.
especially with kids that are struggling, it's hard. And I find myself doing that, judging other people. And it's really hard to not do that. So, but it's a big factor of why, parents kind of stick with the status quo,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And push their kids. So,
And again, one of the other insight that I have seen, which is I would say globally valid. Now I have talked to multiple cultures and
yeah.
multiple society people. So there is a very natural behavior seen in the parents where they kind of project what they could not achieve via their kids. So let's say if if the parent wanted to do, let's say, even skydive, they want their kid to do, right? Or they want the kid to experience that. Or if they didn't have, let's say, a fun college life, they want. So these are the good things that I'm telling, that the way they
Right.
want to fill that void in their life while they're kids. But then there is another pool of expectations. Oh, I could not do that. I really want my kid to do it. And there they define, you know, the definition of progress. The definition of
Yes,
is my kid making progress from there.
totally. And that I see that in a lot of immigrant families here in the US too. It's like, they want something better for their kids. And so you're
Yeah.
pushing, you're sacrificing. And I think that's very beautiful and valid too. Um, it- but sometimes like it comes from a different place. Like, you have to do this because I want to look good. I want my kid, I want to tell people that my kid is a doctor,
Yeah.
or, I want to tell people that my kid goes to Harvard, right?
Yeah.
So, what are your intentions?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like, here's an example too. Like we mentioned before, I was a singer in a band. I
Mm-hmm.
had visions of having like all of my children play instruments and jamming around the campfire. And it
Mm.
was going to be like the Partridge Family, if you know that reference, or The Sound of Music. Did you watch that, by
Yeah,
the way?
it's still in my pending list. Sorry.
Right. So, right, but our kids weren't interested in that, or
Hmm.
I will say they're not interested in it yet, right?
Oh
So,
yeah. So yeah, there is an expectation still pending somewhere.
right, you never know. You never know. There's still some young ones that could get the music bug, but so yeah, it's like you kind of want to live vicariously through your kids, and that that can be really dangerous. And it can really just deny what they want to do and who they are. And the sooner that we can help them to figure out who they are,
Hmm.
the better, I think.
Yeah. So we definitely established the fact that there are some strong reasons of why parents are insecure from their own self pressure, their self built pressure, or from the passing comments or some hard comments coming from around. So there is this fact is definitely established. How do you have dealt with your insecurities as a parent?
Well, I do a lot of learning. I do a lot of like talking to other parents, and I come from a place where I want to grow, right?
Okay.
So, I after 6 kids, my first kid, it was like, you don't know what you're doing. Um, and with each kid or as they grow, and if you're really willing to put in the work, um, you can change and you can learn. And I really, that is a goal of mine, to be a really good parent and to be the best parent that I could be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and when we're adults, we come from a lot of baggage too, right? Like we have how we were raised.
Yeah.
My parents, would yell a lot. And so in turn, I would yell a lot. And my husband doesn't really yell. And so he'd be
Mm.
like, "Why are you always yelling?" Like, I don't know. But it's just
Mm.
kind of like what we learn too. And so it takes an effort to kind of break down, um, and to truly learn about what makes good parents. And that has changed over the years, right? We learn things, we learn about science. Like my mom, when she had me in the hospital, was smoking cigarettes, like after she gave birth to me, because
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know, right? There are things that we learn, and so we can course correct.
Yes.
So I think it's really important to, one, do it, and two, talk. I talk to my kids about it. Like, wow, remember when I used to yell a lot?
Mm.
Well, it's really hard, but I'm trying to work at it, and I'm sorry if I yell at you. Like I catch myself and I show them, like, this is me working through this and working at it, and so they can see that model of, how to learn things, and it's hard, and talk
Yep.
about it. So
Yep. You were also mentioning a couple of more ways to manage it, like talking to experts, I think, was something.
yeah, talking to experts. Like if I am not, if I'm not an expert in social emotional learning, right? So
Mm.
my expertise, my background is teaching English.
Mm.
And now, like, how do I even measure that, right? So finding things like Tomo Club, reading books, like talking to people that are experts in the field of how do you teach your kid to
Mm-hmm.
be more persistent and diligent? I don't know, you know. So that that's an important thing.
Yep. Yep. And at the end of the day, though it is very easy to say than do, but try to let go of control, right? Help your child be the best of what they can be.
Yeah, 100%. That's the hardest thing
Yep.
because, yeah, control is that's really hard. So if you find a easy way to do that, let me know.
And especially the fact in the control side is, since you have seen that, so let's say your kid is making a mistake, whether it is early friendships or they know that their friends are not good because you have been there yourself, right? Or let's say if
Yeah.
they're dating someone, they know that that person is not right, but still, how much you want to explain them, you realize that they're going to make their own mistakes, they're going to learn their own way. How much
Yeah.
head start you want to give, it's of no use.
Yes. I think the most important thing there is really starting early to know that they can come and talk to you
Hmm.
and just be curious, like my oldest daughter is dating, and so she'll come and talk to me and tell me things that happen. And instead of being like, nuts, like, right, hold that back and just, be curious, like, huh, that's interesting. Did that make you feel good?
Hmm.
No? Oh, yeah. Well, maybe that's not the best thing, right? How can you talk to that person? Or do you think it's good to stay with someone like that? Instead of being like, you should totally dump him and like move on, right? Because then they're not going to hear that.
But don't you think that's being like pretentious and not being real in front of your own kids? Because let's say your natural instinct is saying, something, but still you are controlling yourself and not letting it out. Don't you think
Yeah,
that
that's
is making you pretentious?
yeah. What I say to that, like some things, like when my daughter, might be in a situation that I don't agree with, I would
Hmm.
say, I really don't think that's a good idea.
Hmm.
And here's why: you can get hurt. This.
Hmm.
But I also know that I want to grow and trust you, and
Yeah.
I have faith in you that you will make good decisions.
Hmm.
So if you think it's a good idea and you'd like to try this, or, then okay, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it after. And
Yeah.
just know that you can be honest and open with me,
Hmm.
which is very hard sometimes because, but the minute you say, "What are you doing? That's so stupid. How could you be so dumb?"
Hmm.
They will shut off and then they'll know, "Oh, I can't talk to my parents about things like that. I'm
Yeah.
going to go talk to whoever." I want them to know that there's no mistake, nothing that they could do that will ever make me stop loving them.
Hmm.
So, but that's really hard.
You know, that's like your own, I would say like training, as a training part where you have to train, let's say, be a samurai fighter, or you have to train yourself to be something. It's like that, sound like that hard.
It's so hard. And talking to them and say, "This is really hard for me to let
Hmm.
you go to do this." And as a parent, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning and I'm going to make mistakes and I'll apologize ahead of time. And it's really hard, but I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy.
Hmm.
And just knowing, like, here's why I don't think it's a good idea. I'm coming from a place of I want you to be safe, not like I'm trying to punish you.
Yeah. Now I can remember a very common statement my mom used to always say: "You will get to
Mm.
know when you will have kids."
So moms say that in India too, because they
Is
say
it?
that here all the time. Just wait until you have kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think what we have established till now is definitely when it was making decisions for your kids, whether
Mm.
academically or after school, or listening to them, deciding things with them and all. But I want to understand now at Invata. First of all, please introduce Invata to everyone. And also, now at Invata, I understand you are doing it for others, right? Where you don't have that much right sometimes, or that much authority, but at the same time, you want to do best for your clients. So please walk us through that part. That's interesting to know.
Yeah, it's really ju- it's all about relationship, right? So you can't really teach anything to anybody unless, you have some sort of basic level relationship. And
Hmm.
when you're teaching really hard things like life skills, like learning how to be an adult or learning how to persevere through something hard, um, y- that those relationships are even more important, right?
Hmm.
And so our approach really is to get to know the family, get to know, like we talked about, what are your values? And we're completely agnostic. If whatever your values are, we want to support that. If your kid wants to go to Harvard and that is the path, and you have a very strong values of academic success, great. We want to support that. But we can't. We need to kind of understand the whole picture, right? So
Hmm.
thinking about like a family, even a kid as like a diamond, right? There's so many facets to it.
Hmm.
Often in like school, you only see that one side, right? That instead of the whole picture of
Hmm.
beauty of that person, right? So I think that's what we try to do is just really truly understand. And a good analogy to that is like thinking about your family physician,
Hmm.
right? So you find a family physician and you typically stay with that doctor for the whole of your kid's life until they launch into adulthood.
Yeah.
And you as a person have a physician, right? For your whole, and they know you. They know all the ins and outs, literally.
Hmm.
of you, right?
Yeah.
And so they can help you make good choices. Because well, Shauna, you have high blood pressure, so you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z, or
Mm-hmm.
you should really exercise more because this is good for your health, kind of thing. So with traditional models of schooling, you kind of have one teacher a year, right? And
Yeah.
that teacher really gets to know even more than one side of that diamond. And so what we try to do is learn as much as we can and then stay with you, like the Waldorf model of education. A teacher will stay with a class from first grade all the way through to college, and by at that point they know the kids so well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just and it's a more efficient way to serve kids because you can learn about them more. You can connect them to what they need faster than in a traditional model. So that's kind of how we handle, just really based on relationship.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely get that. But would you like to like define the services which Invata offer as well?
Yeah, so one is being an advisor.
Mm.
Um, you know, if your kid is struggling with math, oh, okay, we can connect you with this. Look, there's this local program. We have this tutor. If your kid is really struggling at home and doesn't have a lot of social opportunities, oh, look, here's Tomo Club. You should check it out. Like he could be with other kids and learn games. So as a homeschool mom, I found that it would take hours and hours and hours to try and find the perfect things for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
So what we try to do for families is just cut that time
Mm-hmm.
so that here's the top 5 things that would really benefit your type of learner.
Yeah.
We also offer different types of assessments that most homeschoolers don't really have access to.
Mm.
There's value in doing assessments as snapshots of learning to make sure there's no, holes or disabilities even. So we have those tools, but mostly the main service is really just the relationship and helping your child, connecting them to opportunities that will develop them into the person that they were meant to be.
Mm. And how is it different or how is it same to grow your kids as compared to your dealing with clients?
I didn't hear you say again.
I
How is
mean,
it
say
what?
how is it same or different of managing your kids versus managing your clients' kids?
I would say it's the same.
Okay,
Like
that's
like I
interesting.
said earlier, I have a vested interest in the future. And that
Hmm.
future is these kids. And this is my lane where I feel like I can make a little bit of a difference, make the world a little bit of a better place
Hmm.
by helping families. So when we work with a family, I feel like they become friends and almost family.
Hmm.
And so in that way, I feel like, yeah, it's like my own kids, and I want to help you as a parent also.
Hmm.
Um, and it's different too because, it's a service. It's not for everybody.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's hard to, maybe we're not the right fit. Um, so, but really, if it's working, it's really I treat it like it's my own kids because I really do feel like raising the kids is the future,
Yeah,
and I want to have a beautiful future. So
and that's a beautiful thought. But why I am bringing it up back and forth and
yeah.
kind of having a counter questioning is because that's the main topic of our discussion today. That
Yeah.
is my child making progress? Because you knew what progress meant to you.
Mhm.
You could manage your expectations and your actions with your kids. Why
Yes.
I'm circling back and forth is when you deal with a big set of parents and their expectations are all different. How do
Yeah,
you do manage that as well? And how, what is the definition of progress or growth for individual clients? Have you seen any game similarities? Have you seen some stark differences? How do you manage that? That's where I
yeah.
think the insights lie.
There you go. So yeah, it's different for every family, right? And so when we first do an intake with a family, it's finding out what their values are. We're
Hmm.
serving one family now that the dad retired, and he said, "I want to travel around the world. I want my kids to see and have these opportunities.
Hmm.
How can I make that happen?" And so for them, that was really important. And learning about what they need. Okay, they need a type of learning where they can do anywhere.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's really just getting to know what is meaningful to the family, what the family values, starting at a like a baseline,
Hmm.
and then saying, okay, if you're here, we want to get to here. Another family, um, their students have special needs,
Hmm.
and they're more low performing. So this year we focused on reading, and the our student jumped 2 grade levels in reading
Okay. Wow.
because we had that focus on reading, and that was a goal of the parents. They
Hmm.
wanted him to be able to read to understand. He's a younger kiddo, so that was a huge goal, and we were able to focus on that
Hmm.
um, while he was having fun. He he loves motocross, or excuse me, supercross. I guess there's a difference, which is like dirt bikes.
Hmm.
And so everything we did through the lens of supercross because that's what he loves. So
Wow.
when you could do interest based, all his math was about the courses of supercross and what the stats are, and he would read about the riders and how they grew up and what they're so everything was through that lens, and he just jumped and thrived. So
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely interesting. That is my kid making progress is a very moving target for parents, and it
yeah.
depends on the current situation. So for some kids, for some parents, it's my kid learn to read, while for some it may be my kid go out and play more, to make friends, to
Right.
travel along with me while studying. So I think those, it's a moving target is the best way to say it. But I think you
Well,
still put, sorry, you're saying something.
no, go ahead.
But I think you still brought up the assessment piece of
Yeah.
tracking your kids' progress as per yourself. So it's very
Hmm.
personalized um, assessment for yourself of whether you're as simple as where you're putting your money into as a
Hmm.
parent, because you are managing the finances. So you have X number of options, but you have a limited budget to plan. So if you can draw some more light on the assessment models.
We talk a lot about SMART goals, right? Like, what is a goal? What can we measure? And my understanding too is, and I'd love to know how you do this with Tomo Club too, is like
Mm-hmm.
if I want to measure, like if it's important for me that my kids know how to persevere through difficulty,
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to measure that?
Yeah.
Right? So we talk a lot about that. It's easy to measure like reading
Mm.
because there's lots of assessments for that. It's a little bit harder to manage or measure other than like anecdotally, right? The the harder things, or I would say for at least for our family, things that matter too. Um, but there's different types of ways to assess, um, and talking with parents at the beginning, what are your goals, and then matching those goals to, okay, here's how we can measure that.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to have your kid be number one, on the SATs, get
Mm-hmm.
100% or on the SATs, which is to get into college.
Mm-hmm.
That looks very different from I just want my kid to be happy. What does that mean? How can we measure that? And so like I'd like to throw it back to you and just say, how do you measure that? If my kid is enrolled and I want them to work on, working with other kids, working collaboratively, because I think those are the skills of the future. Like, how do you measure that?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I'll come to how do we measure that at Tomo Club SA. But I think one important point that I could make out from your conversation was measuring your kid against themselves. I
Yes.
think that should be the assessment model, which should be paramount. That rather than comparing with anyone else, it should be whether my kid is progressing to what he was a day before, or a week before, or a month before.
100%. Like our girls do, we a lot of our girls do rowing.
Hmm.
And so they're constantly talking about their time on the erg, which is the rowing machine.
Yeah.
Right. And so setting like their personal record, beating that, beating that, beating that, right?
Hmm.
And so you can use that in anything.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the strongest thing, that internal motivation or intrinsic motivation versus that extrinsic, like I'm doing that because I want to impress my parents or I want a good grade instead of like I'm doing it because I really want to. It makes me feel good to work
Right.
against that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I can draw parallels with how we think when we work in a corporation, right? Our goals are usually mapped to last financial year. So there
Yeah.
is some, and that model has been working for centuries, right? So,
Yes.
so I
Yeah.
think, and those companies that survived, let's say 100 years, 200 years, if you look at
Mm.
their model of working, it's always been comparative to what it was in the last fiscal year.
Right.
So, so I think rather than if it had been the success mantra of comparing with everyone, then all the companies would have been making a bar chart with all the
100%.
competitors, but they don't.
Yes. Right. It's against themselves. There is
Yeah,
value to kind of see how people are doing things, but it's so unique and different, right?
yeah. So when you were saying that, that was a thought came to my mind. Oh yeah, actually, that's what we also do as a company.
Yeah.
So there is some science which we didn't know.
Right?
Yeah. So, and coming to your point, that so at Tomo Club, as we discussed before, that we make educational games around SEL, and again, SEL is the most subjective thing it can be in this world.
Yes.
But as I said, when we thought of this process of comparing yourself with yourself, then we got an answer of how to do assessment. And
Right.
like right now, we have three main pillars of assessment. That is on which we judge the kid is one is innovation. So whenever there's a game, online game happening, how are they innovating their way out? Then
Mm.
the other is about leadership. So I think that is the second point. And the third is mostly around collaboration. So these are three main pillars of assessment, and all the three pillars are further divided into around 5 to 6 points. So total we have around 15 parameters. So though we are trying to add a lot of sciences behind it of how we can do and measure it, but when I talk to parents, their definition of growth when they put their kid into SEL courses of Tomo Club is so widespread. To give an example, for one parent was that after the session, my kid is coming back to me excited and talking about it. That is growth for me, which he wasn't doing, right?
Yes.
For one parent, it was that the other day now he has new words added to his vocabulary. That's growth for me.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
similarly, I think for few it's like my kid is excited about learning. So I could see that, though I had tried to put a lot of quantified sciences behind my assessment, but the end of the day there are very few humanly takeaways which parents have when they want to compare whether my kid is growing. And though when we do this assessment, it is important for us as well whether we are impactful and not just subjectively. So yeah, I think Tomo Club as a product till now has been showing me great traces of kids actually progressing, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, I think a lot of like, at least in my experience as an educator, the SEL stuff is very, there's not really a way to quantify, it's mostly just like information, right? But
Hmm.
how do you know, like, how can you see that your kid is learning that, right? So I think what you're doing, yeah, it's good to know that my kid is happy and likes the class, but also like he has new vocabulary that
Hmm.
he can that he knows how to use. He has a new way, like the skills that you're teaching, I think, are what companies are going to want to hire in, like they
Yes.
want to hire people that are innovative,
Yeah.
that can collaborate. And schools don't really teach that well. In fact, they teach you kind of the opposite, like do what we say to get the grade, right?
Yeah.
So I love what Tomo Club is doing.
Thank you so much for that. Plus, it's not something that will happen. That's already happening. If you do a lot of analytics, so there was, I think, American Succeed is a journal which do a lot of research. So they put up a analysis that through the job boards. So they analyzed, I think, in the entire year, there were around 50 or 60 million jobs posted on our job boards. And when
Huh.
they analyzed the skills that they were asking for, 75% of them were asking for soft skills in the primary skills required. So
Yep.
that defines it all, that it's not something that will happen, it's already happening right in front of us.
Right. Right.
So
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's something that they're trying to weave into school, but it's just not happening fast enough, frankly, in my opinion.
yep.
There's a lot of change that needs to happen. So I love that this is available for kids. It's such a great learning opportunity.
Yep. So thank you, Shauna. I think it was very informative. I think we
Yeah.
brought up points, just to summarize, we brought up points of how do you buy things or choose things for your kids, to learning
Yep.
them, to understanding them, to, understanding their growth mindset and defining growth for yourself. So I think there will be solid takeaways for this session, who like people who attended, as well as for people who are going to watch it later. um,
Yeah.
we got a participant, any question that you guys have, Matt and Vivek?
You're muted, Matt.
I, yeah,
Um,
go ahead, Matt.
no.
Vivek,
So,
you
uh,
yeah.
I did not have any question per se. I just connected with a lot of the things that you were saying, Shauna. For example, so I have a 9-year-old Kabir who, especially 2 or 3 years ago, was struggling a lot in school, especially with attention issues. And many of the things you just talked about, for example, he's crazy about Minecraft and Subway Surfer and Disney movies and Frozen and using strategies. We've been working with many people who've been helping us, special educators, and teaching him math through the things which he already cares about has been
Yeah.
so game changing, because to him he's not doing math anymore which he detests. He's just doing Minecraft and Subway Surfer which he loves, and in the process he's picking up those very same skills which we would traditionally call math.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, Minecraft is a fantastic like avenue to learn things. I mean, building worlds in Minecraft, and that's all geometry, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, so much,
And the
so much.
Yeah. And the other thing which I think helped a lot, again, a tip which came from one of his counselors, is she was like, remember that even when you are frustrated because they behaved in a certain skillful way, try to remind yourself that they're doing the best they can with what they have access to at this moment. So if you remember that, rather than correct, you would try to connect and try to give them a tool rather than chastise them.
100%. You're the family unit, like them growing, this is the sandbox that they can learn and build in and in a safe environment, right? Before they get launched into the world where it's just not a nice place often. So if they can learn these skills in the environment of the family and make mistakes when they know that it's safe to, they're going to have so much more confidence, right?
Yep.
Hey,
Nothing else to say.
Shauna, one of the takeaways that I definitely will take away from this was your frustration that not all children are the same.
Hmm.
Which that's what you started off by saying, but that is what makes them unique and beautiful. But it does make educating them an individual sport and a team sport as a family and as a community. But every single child is different. I was a pro golfer. I can't teach my kids golf. They don't want to play golf.
I know exactly what you mean. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they're as different as chalk and cheese.
Yes, it would, but just think how boring it would be if they were all the same, right?
Agree.
We wouldn't have people be doctors. We wouldn't have people be artists. We wouldn't have all of these amazing things that we need in the world. So we really have to find that little genius in each child and bring it out to make the world a better place
Yeah,
because no one else can do that except
right.
those kids.
The other thing this reminded me of, I don't know if just in one of these or something else, somebody was talking about how the new age way of it is there are no teachers, they're just master learners. And
Yeah.
they just focus on the how of the teaching while letting the kids self select into the what they want to learn, which is a very interesting way to look at it.
It is interesting. I think like there's a lot to be learned about like, apps and computers, but I think really when it comes down to it, we learn best from each other, from humans. The
100%.
technology should always be, I feel, in the service of that human connection. And that's why I love Tomo Club, right? Using that technology to connect with humans,
Yeah.
right? And that's
The
where it
other
gives.
realization for me has been like this is something which it makes sense now that I think about it, but I've never experienced it before. Like right now, what I'm doing is I am building a company which is offering coaching. So anyway, the point being, I've gone through a lot of these cohort-based experiences where there's a bunch of people with similar goals who come together to form a cohort, and that method of learning, even if it's completely virtual, is incredible.
Yes, yes. Learning in a cohort together is really powerful. Um, we live in an age where knowledge is no longer kept behind the gates of institutions, right? This is freely, all of this knowledge is freely available. I can get a Harvard education through YouTube if I want to, but so why don't I? I don't know. I need to be around people. I know
On
that
that
about.
on that particular note, did you know that YouTube now delivers more educational hours than all the schools and universities in the world combined?
I
I can
believe
bet
it,
on it. I can believe it right away.
100%. So it's like why, so one is access to this, right? Not everyone in the world has internet, has computers. So think of all of those untapped geniuses out there that don't have access to the resources like we do.
Yeah.
But two, if it's out there, why aren't we all brilliant yet, right?
Yeah.
Because we all learn
We're
different
working
ways.
on it.
We're working on
Yeah.
it. That's the next company, right? Growing geniuses.
Well, there I heard a very crazy thing about called designer babies. Heard of
Designer.
that?
Yes. Yeah, you can. That's probably a
After
sci-fi
designer
movie.
babies is growing
Yeah.
geniuses. So at each stage along the way, or when they're born, you can do designer babies. Once you have the baby, or we'll do go working genius, growing geniuses.
But yeah, so it was fun. It was fun, guys, catching up with all of you. And thank you, Shauna, for taking out time for this.
Good to see you
And
guys, and thank you, Avinash, for hosting and doing all that you do.
I love this conversation. Honestly, this
Yeah,
conversation itself was something that I was very looking forward to. And
same.
this is a learning thing for me as well, where I can know these insights as coming directly from the parents. So I love
Yep.
doing this and
Yeah. Well,
continue doing it.
Thank you so much, Shauna, for this, and thank you, Avinash, for organizing. And thank you, Matthew, as well, for participating.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thank you guys.
Okay, guys, have a good day. See you. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.